You may be familiar with a congresswoman named Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She is a very vocal young member of Congress, and she has some pretty radical ideas. One of her aides, a guy named Dan Riffle, was quoted as saying, "Every billionaire is a policy failure. Every billionaire is a policy failure." In other words, when the government of the United States allows any citizen to become so wealthy that they become a billionaire worth $1,000 million, then somehow or another the government has failed. That it is a failure on the part of our leaders to allow such a thing to happen. And you'll constantly see her talking about taxing the rich. There is a great movement in our country to hate the rich. And it is something that's born directly of socialism. You remember we talked about in our last session that socialism is the idea is that everyone in the nation, every citizen in the nation, should share equally in the resources of the nation. That there should be no rich and no poor. Everybody should have equal and the same of everything. Well, really where socialism comes from, if you look at the deep roots of it, it begins and really is driven by a hatred of the rich, a hatred of wealthy people. So if you're going to have a system where you have everybody has the same, then a socialist has to hate the rich. A socialist has to work against the rich because they have to be able to take what the rich have and give it to everyone else. So this evening we want to look at this whole idea of the rich and the poor and the way that they are viewed in the society. And we want to look at two things tonight as we try and do that. Number one, we're going to ask how the rich get rich in America. And this is from chapter 3 of my new book, Collapse. Chapter 3, Key Takeaways, How the Rich Get Rich in America. And then we want to look at the poor. Socialism is sort of putting down the rich and trying to lift up the poor. At least that's the stated goal. That's not always what happens. In fact, it's never what happens. What we want to do is look at the real status of the poor in America. Are the poor really taken advantage of by the rich? These two subjects are very much connected. So let's ask then, how do the rich get rich in America? Chapter 3, Key Takeaways. One of the reasons that people hate the rich in the past, at least, is the way that they came about obtaining their wealth. There have been a number of ways that people get wealthy, even today in modern nations around the world. We have some nations that have, and in the past, of course, this has been a big part of people's wealth, is that they thought they had that wealth by divine right. That is, that God somehow made them better than everyone else and allowed them to take the wealth of the common people because they had a divine right. This is on the order of kings and queens that has been part of world history since the very beginning. So you ask yourself, how do the rich get rich in America? Do they get rich by divine right? Well, no, they do not get rich by divine right. Another reason that people don't like the rich is when they're born into it. People who are born wealthy, with a silver spoon in their mouths, as they always say. So you ask yourself, in America, do most wealthy people get rich by being born into that wealth? Well, there certainly are those who are born wealthy, and we might not like it, but it is not a sin and it is certainly not a crime. But most people in the United States that are wealthy, you will find, are not born into that wealth. They don't just come into the world rich. Most people in America that are rich work for their wealth. They are people who started off like me and you, just normal, average, everyday folks, and they invested in their education, they invested in a business, they invested and they created something we call value creation. So in the United States of America, you primarily do not get rich by divine right. In fact, I would say no one gets rich by divine right in the United States. There are some that are born in it, but not many. And then most of the people that are wealthy work for it, and they do so by creating value. It is value that causes someone to be wealthy over time, and that comes from hard work. Let's look at someone that everybody knows. Who is this? Everyone knows that this is Jeff Bezos, who is the founder of Amazon. And right now, it varies by the week really, but his net worth is $195 billion. And there are people that hate him simply because he is rich. But how did he come to that wealth? Did he steal it? Did he force people to give it to him? How did he come about that wealth? Let's look at how value creation is how Jeff Bezos got wealthy. What is value? Think about what value is. Well, value is something that you're willing to pay for. If it's something you want and you're willing to pay for it, then it has value. And the more value it has, the more you're willing to pay for it. Well, let's look and see how Jeff Bezos, by creating Amazon, creating the value that Amazon brings, eventually Jeff Bezos becomes rich or becomes wealthy. Let's see how this happens. First of all, you have the customer here on the left, and I would venture to say that everyone that's watching this video is a customer of Amazon. Just about everybody in America and many people around the world are customers of Amazon. Why does someone become a customer of Amazon? Well, they find in Amazon some value. And so they take their money and they purchase that value from Amazon. We get deliveries from Amazon just about every day of the week. We send our money, we give our money to Amazon because they have value that we want. They have created something that we desire and we want to pay for. So if you take all of these customers, and over time all of these customers are continuing to give Amazon a little bit of their money over and over and over and over. Well, over time, this builds up to be a tremendous amount of value. And what happens is every time you purchase something, now this is a very simple way to look at it, but it really does hold true if you step back far enough. When you decide to purchase something from Amazon, a little bit of that money ends up in the pocket of Jeff Bezos, because Jeff Bezos is the one who created that value system. He had the idea, he got the money together to start it, he's managed it, he's organized it, he's led it. And yes, he's had employees that work for him, but he has paid those employees, but he is the one really responsible for that value. So over time, this is how Jeff becomes wealthy. If you create enough value for enough people, eventually you end up wealthy because you've created so much value. Now let's ask a question of Jeff Bezos. People hate Jeff Bezos. I mean hate Jeff Bezos. But here's the question. Did Jeff Bezos force anyone to buy from him? No, he hasn't forced anyone to buy from him. People voluntarily give Jeff Bezos their money because Jeff Bezos has created so much value for them that they want to give him that money. So when we look at a man like Jeff Bezos and we start to hate him as if he's done something wrong, we have to see that he hasn't done anything wrong to get the wealth that he has. He's done everything right. And we have willingly given him our money because he has brought us so much value. Think about Dan Riffle's comment there, and certainly Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's viewpoint that we need to stop allowing people to become billionaires. We need to stop allowing Jeff Bezos of the world to be created. Well, you remember I told you in the first session about the law of incentives, that people create these companies, these inventions, these ideas because in the United States and in free market capitalistic economies, they have the incentive to do so. So if they risk their money, if they risk their time, if they risk their fortunes, then they can reap the benefit if it goes well. And of course, the flip side is if it doesn't go well, they lose everything. But that's one of the reasons that they get the money at the end of the day and the workers don't, because the workers are not the ones risking everything. They're not the ones bringing this value. They're simply participating in a value system that someone else has created. But I want you to think about it. If Ocasio-Cortez could have her way and there could not be any more billionaires or any multimillionaires, what would happen to incentives to create these high-value companies? Would Apple have been created if Steve Jobs could not benefit from that creation? Very unlikely that he would do all of that work, take all of that risk, if he could not receive the reward of it. What about Sam Walton and Walmart? Would he have done it? Very unlikely. Jeff Bezos? Very unlikely. So what happens if you follow the socialist idea of Ocasio-Cortez, you end up with Apple, Walmart, and Amazon never existing, because the men who started these and had these ideas would have no incentive to do that. And how much value would that take from us? We mentioned this last time, I'll mention it again. We don't have to become 100% socialist like North Korea in order to take the incentive away from these men. Things like high taxes on the rich, controlling prices, and overregulating industries are ways that democratic governments start to take away incentive and slowly erode the value and the wealth of the economy and the wealth that people have individually. Think about the insanity of this. Let's go back and think about those three companies, Apple, Walmart, and Amazon. People hate these companies, especially Walmart and Amazon. I don't know why they don't hate Apple as much. I guess they don't hate Apple as much because Apple is cool. But still, one of the wealthiest companies in the world is Amazon, is Apple. But think about the insanity of this. And this is a quote from the book here. Here's a question to ponder. Why do we hate the men that bless us with so much value? Think about the value that Walmart has given to you. Think about the value that Apple, the value that Amazon has brought to you. Why do we hate the men that bless us with so much value? We hate them, which implies we want them destroyed. But if we destroyed them, we would lose the value we are so glad they brought us. Are we insane or what? Now, there's something very interesting about free markets that you need to understand when it comes to wealthy people. Are wealthy people sometimes greedy people? Sure they are. Are they sometimes materialistic? Yes, they are. Are they sometimes scumbags? Absolutely they are. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about a free market economy. The free market economy, the capitalistic economy, is the only type of economic system that takes the greedy rich guy and uses that greed and that materialism and pride to bring value and blessing to you, the common everyday person. Let's look and see how that happens. Jeff Bezos. Let's look at him and think about him for a moment. Let's say that Jeff Bezos, and I'm not saying that he is, I don't know Jeff Bezos, he doesn't call me, he doesn't text, he doesn't write. But let's say that he's just a greedy scumbag, and you wouldn't want your kids around him, you wouldn't want your wife around him, you wouldn't want to be around him. Well, because of the way free markets work, because of the law of incentives, remember incentives is that we're allowing the person to reap the rewards of what they do, and that drives them to do those things. Because of the law of incentives, Jeff Bezos gets up every day trying to figure out how to bring value to who? To you. You see, imagine that rich doctor who wants his face on the cover of a magazine. So he gets up every day and he labors and he works and he spends his own money to come up with this new surgical technique to save your life. And if he can come up with that, then he gets his face on the cover of a magazine and he makes millions of dollars. Well, think about that. What has capitalism and free markets just done? It has taken and it has channeled those things that we don't like about people, that greed and that materialism and that pride. It has channeled it in such a way that it is bringing value to the whole society at large. Socialism doesn't do this. Socialism takes away the incentive from people like that rich doctor or Jeff Bezos or anyone else. And not every rich person is materialistic and not every rich person is greedy. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying take the worst case. Socialism just keeps those people from ever inventing anything, takes away the incentive for them to create those companies, and then everybody becomes poor because there's no value out there to bring in and make people wealthy. So socialism doesn't help you with these greedy materialistic people. But capitalism, free markets, they do help you because of the law of incentives. But I want to consider, if it's true that the rich don't get rich in America by using and abusing other people, but by bringing value that we willingly pay for, if it's true that they're not born with a divine right to have it, which is very easy to understand how someone could dislike. And if they don't steal it or oppress us to get it, then why do we really hate them? Why do we really hate the rich? Well, number one, we hate the rich because we're jealous. We're jealous. We glorify the people who aren't rich. We make out the rich to be the worst guys in the world. But if we looked into our own hearts, what we would find is the reason we don't like them is because we're just jealous of them. We want what they have, but we don't want to work as hard or do what they did, or maybe we don't have the skills and abilities to do that, so we're jealous. So we rise up to the government and say, take that wealth from that man, take that riches, I want it. We're just jealous. How about this? We're also greedy. We're greedy. You don't have to be rich to be greedy. We want, and I think this is a driving factor among those of lower income who want the wealth of the rich. They are greedy. They don't want to work. They don't want to do anything, but they want to take from those who have it. They're greedy. They want to pile up wealth that they have not earned. They themselves are greedy. Another quote from the book here about the greed of the poor. Every day, millions of Americans accuse the rich of being greedy and materialistic. But if they were to look into their own hearts, they would see that that is the very reason they hate them, because they are greedy and materialistic themselves. They want what these other men and women have worked for. They just don't want to work as hard as they did, or risk what they risked, or endure what they endured to have it. Remember, you don't have to be rich to be greedy. And then finally, why do we hate the rich? Because we are told to. We are told to. Do you know the very people, some of the very people that are always stirring up this hatred of the rich are rich themselves? That we are being told by rich people to hate rich people. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? Nancy Pelosi, for example, the senator from, or the congresswoman from California, is worth $114 million, but always playing that rich card. Barack Obama is worth $40 million, always playing that rich card. Bernie Sanders is worth $2 million. So you have to ask yourself, why do these rich people ask us to hate rich people when that includes themselves? Well, here is why they do it. Because it works. Because it works. If you can stir up people enough, if you can take advantage of those fleshly ideas that they have, and as America moves farther and farther from the God of the Bible, it's much, much easier to stir up people that have no integrity. As you do that, as you stir this up, you can get power over them. You can say, hey, I'm going to help you with these rich people. I'm going to take the wealth from these rich people. Give me power, vote for me, and I'll help you. And what do? They win elections that way. So they're going to continue to do it as long as we let them do it. But they are only really just manipulating us. They are the rich manipulators of the poor. But Jesus warns us about materialism. Whether you're rich or poor, Jesus warns us to be careful about materialism. He said in Luke 12:15, take heed and beware of covetousness. Take heed, he says. Beware of covetousness. Beware of wanting what other people have. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses. Jesus is saying whether you're rich or poor, do not long for more, because that's really not what life is about. Life isn't about all the stuff that you can store up. Life isn't about all the riches you can take from the rich, or if you're rich, it's not about piling it up. That's not the meaning of life, Jesus said. Look out for materialism. So let's ask ourselves, is God against the rich? Is God against the rich? A lot of people think that God is against the rich, that God is for the poor no matter what, and God is against the rich no matter what. But that simply is not true. Let's look at a passage that some can easily take to support the idea that God does not like the rich, that God is against the rich. James 5:1-6. Very easy to look at this verse at a cursory glance and say, well, look, God hates the rich. Look what he says about them. Let's read it and then let's look a little bit more closely at this. James 5:1-6. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for your miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver are corroded, and their corrosion will be a witness against you and will eat your flesh like fire. You have heaped up treasure in the last days. Indeed, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, cry out. And the cries of the reapers have reached the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. You have lived on the earth in pleasure and luxury. You have fattened your hearts as in the day of slaughter. You have condemned, you have murdered the just. He does not resist you. You say, whoa, Wes, right there it is. My goodness. James is laying it on, and by extension, God is laying it on to the rich. He is laying it on, and his focus here is the rich. But I want you to notice the context and why he is upset with the rich. Is God upset with the rich just because they're rich, as we are today? No. Let's look at this. He says, you have kept the wages of the workers back by fraud. You have defrauded them. You have lied and manipulated. They did the work, and you refused to pay them. That is why God is upset with these rich people, not because they're simply rich. And look at this. You have condemned, you have murdered the just. So what has happened here is these rich men and women, supposedly, who knows, had taken their wealth and the power, and they had used it to cause people to be poor by not paying them their wages. They had used their power to murder and condemn those who are just, the poor just. Just because they had the power, they did it. Now I ask you, in America today, is that what happens? Does Jeff Bezos keep back the wages of Amazon workers by fraud? No, he doesn't. And we'll look at why he can't do that when we get to the poor a little bit later. He doesn't do that. And people say, well, he doesn't pay us enough. That's a totally different discussion. He's paying you what he's agreed to pay you. You just want more. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Does Jeff Bezos condemn and murder the just through his power? No, he doesn't. So God is not against the rich any more than he's against the poor. He's against those who are unrighteous. And in this case, the rich are using their power, the power that their money gives them, to defraud and to harm those who are poor. And of course, God is against that no matter what. You see, here's our goal, and this is very, very critical. What Ocasio-Cortez and what socialism wants is to take all the wealth of the rich and distribute it among everybody. And as we've seen, that only leads to poverty. But that should not be our goal. Our goal should not be that every person has all the same. What we should strive for is a system. Pay attention to this. This is very important. What we should strive for is a system in which every person has equal access to opportunity, not equal distribution of rewards. When you seek equal distribution of rewards, you then have to take from the rich something that is not yours. You have to be unjust as a government to take from someone who has earned and give it to someone who has not earned. And whenever you do that, you lose all freedom within the society. Remember the power that we talked about the government must take in order to distribute rewards, in other words, money, to everyone. We don't want that. What we want is that every person, regardless of their color, their gender, their wealth level when they begin, where they live, whether they're a redneck or whatever, that they have equal access to opportunity. You can go and do anything you want to do. And there is, when this is the goal, equal access to opportunity is the goal. There is no nation in the history of the world that has ever allowed more people to come up out of poverty and rise up into the middle class or into the upper class than the United States of America. We've had a black president. We have women who are astronauts and fighter pilots. We have white guys who are poor from little redneck villages who become wealthy and successful. There is no limit in the United States of America to what you can do if you are willing to take that chance. You have equal access to opportunity. But what we're transitioning to is, who cares about the opportunity? We just want to take what the rich have and give it to someone else. Now, how is that righteous?